Hello, and welcome to this session on Cosmic. It's great to see you, whoever you are. But in particular, if you are Victoria Primary, Year 6, Norwich class, Leesingham, St Patrick's Primary, Year 5, at 7 Stars Primary, classes 7, 8, 9, and Kirby C of E. If you are Seahorse, U, Kingfisher, and Healer class at TIMU Academy. If you are Rowling class at Brampton Abbott School. If you are 5JM and 5AS at Bexton Primary, who are writing great stuff about the Porsche chapter. If you are the Year 5 class at the beautifully named and the appropriately named 7 Stars Primary. If you are Hillbourne Primary School in Poole, that would be fantastic. To 5EW, 6EB and 6AC. Class 5 at Chevening, hello. Hope Primary, Yarm Primary, and the tiny school of Clearwell Village in Gloucestershire and Gilroyd School. You are all very welcome, and there are your shout outs. Oh, sorry, there's one more here. That's Brackenbury Primary. Who asked the question? So I'm going to answer that question first. Quite a few questions. Daisy Jones asked this question as well, which is, where did the idea come from? Let's start with that, and then I'm going to read a bit. Then I'm going to answer your questions, which I haven't read yet, and then we're going to read a bit more. So that first question from Daisy Jones, and lots of other people asked this question, not just Daisy. She said, how did you think of Liam, especially his unusual height and facial hair? So I have a story about that. My son had a really good friend, and they didn't go to the same school, and every day after school, my son's friend would call and knock on the door for him like this. Hello, is Benedict playing out? And off they would go and they'd play football together. But then we went away for a year. And during that time, that boy had a growing spurt. Has anyone in your class had a growing spurt? Is anyone in your class unusually tall? I think it's really quite difficult if you are. This boy had a growing spurt. And so my son was listening for the knock on the door, and the knock on the door came, but it wasn't like, hello, is Benedict playing out? It was like, and he opened the door, and the door was like, and here was this giant mutant version of his friend standing in the doorway saying, hello, is Benedict playing out? And there was my little boy like this. Because he was huge and he had big muscles and he had hair in weird places and his voice kept going up and down like this. And off they went. So he was just, and that thing of a growing spurt made me think, whoa. I think all the best stories start with this phrase. Wouldn't it be great if? I think that's a really, if you're thinking of your own story, that phrase, wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be great if you had a car that could fly? Wouldn't it be great if you found a bag full of money? Wouldn't it be great if you were invisible? And I thought, wouldn't it be great if you were 11 or 12 years old, but you look like a grown-up? What would you do? So that's how the idea for Cosmic began. Although I have to say, I'm not sure it is great. I think it's really hard if you're big for your age. Grown-ups expect you to be cleverer because you're bigger. And they say things like, you should know better, a big lad like you. So with that in mind, I'm going to read you the bit where Liam has his very first day at school, big school. So nobody knows him and he's not wearing school uniform because it doesn't fit him. This is his first day at school. On my first day at Waterloo High, oh, by the way, you need to know this. If you haven't read this far, Liam is obsessed with places called Waterloo. It's partly because where I am now is sort of Waterloo. But there were places all over the world called Waterloo because of the Battle of Waterloo. There are Waterloos in Russia and Waterloos in America and Waterloos in Africa, which this Waterloo is twinned with. Liam's parents don't like to travel, but Liam is dying to see the world, which he will. So he's become obsessed with all these other Waterloos. On my first day at Waterloo High, I was the tallest person on the lower school site. The new uniform that Mum had bought at the beginning of the summer didn't fit me anymore. and they had to send off for an extra large lower school blazer. I got a special dispensation to wear my own clothes for the first half term. When we went to get my travel pass for the bus to school, the woman in the office wouldn't believe I was school age, so we had to go home and get my birth certificate. And then next morning when I showed it to the bus driver, she wouldn't believe it was my bus pass. And I had to get off the bus and text my mum, and she came down and explained to the driver of the next bus that I was just unusually tall for my age. It's not the height, love, said the driver. It's the stubble. So that's, sorry, I skipped a bit there, sorry about that. When I got to school, Mrs. Sass, the head, saw me in reception. She said, "Oh, Tom." And I said, "No, Liam." And she said, "Yes, of course. I'm Lorraine. Come with me." And I do remember thinking, fancy her telling me her first name, isn't that friendly? Mrs. Kendall never told us her first name all the time we were at Joan of Arc Primary. So Lorraine took me to the staff room and started to tell me the first names of all the teachers. They all shook hands at me and said that they were pleased to meet me. And I was thinking, well, what a polite school. Do they do this to every new kid? It must take ages. Then Lorraine said, "Everybody, this is Mr. Middleton, our new head of media studies." And she pointed at me. And I know I should have put her right there and then, but someone gave me a mug of coffee and a custard cream and sat me down in a nice big chair, and I thought, I'll tell them after the biscuits. So that is how I ended up on stage, standing just behind Lorraine while she talked to the whole school. There were about 8 people in the front row who knew me because they'd been at Joan of Arc Primary, including Florida Kirby, who kept waving and making faces. Mrs. Sass said everybody was welcome. She hoped everyone had a good summer. She said something about a new registration procedure. And then she said, "And now, please welcome our new member of staff. He's going to be teaching media studies. He'll be the form tutor for Class 9 Mandela. May I present Mr. Middleton?" And she pointed at me. And I stepped up to the microphone and I went, "Thanks, Lorraine." And everyone was going, "Lorraine, Lorraine, her name's Lorraine." And all these faces were looking up at me. And part of me was thinking, I really need to think more about the consequences of my actions, and then stuff like this wouldn't happen to me. But another part of me was thinking, this is good. I said, "Good morning, everybody." Can you do that in your classroom? If I say good morning, everyone, you say good morning. I said, "Good morning, everybody." And everyone said, "Good morning, sir." Sir. I said, "Has anyone here been to Waterloo near Liverpool?" 1,200 hands shot up and waggled in the air like a salute. Do it. 1,200 hands shot up in the air and waggled like a salute, and looking out across them, I felt like the bad emperor in Star Wars. I said, "Has anyone here been to Waterloo in Belgium, scene of the original Battle of Waterloo in 1815? Nobody had. I said, "What about Waterloo in Siberia?" Siberia is as big as Europe. It's got the largest freshwater lake in the world, a lake so big it's got its own species of dolphin. This is all true, by the way. And the ice on it is so thick, they run railway lines across it. Has anyone here been to Waterloo in Siberia? Nobody had. Why not? No one answered, but they all squirmed in their seats as though going to Siberia had been homework and they'd forgotten to do it. What about Waterloo in Sierra Leone? Has anyone been there? No, no one had. Sierra Leone's got a lush rainforest and an amazing history. Has anyone been to Waterloo in Sierra Leone? No. Why? They all squirmed in their seats again. Why? Why have we all been to the Waterloo at the bypass and the Waterloo at the shopping precinct, and none of us been to the Waterloo in the jungle, the Waterloo by the waterfall, the Waterloo by the frozen lake? These places are not in Narnia. You don't need a magic wardrobe to get to them. They are in our world. We could visit them on the bus. Obviously, it would take a lot of buses. And someone shouted, "Yes!" And I was amazed to see it was not one of the children. It was Lorraine. And I realized now that Lorraine thought I was being metaphorical. She thought I was going to go on and say something about how education broadens your mind and widens your horizon and gives you brave new worlds to love. But I didn't say that. I said, "Let's go!" No one moved. They all thought I was being metaphorical too. I said, "What are we doing here? Let's go. Follow me!" I don't know where this last bit came from. It was part of my flow. But I walked out down the middle of the hall towards the doors at the back, It took a minute, but someone followed me, and someone else, and someone else, and someone else, and everyone followed me out of the hall, through the lower school exit, and into the playground. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. I walked up to the gates and pushed. Nothing happened. Waterloo is a high security school. The gates are locked at 9 o'clock and you can't get in or out without a swipe card. And that's why there was a man in a leather jacket sitting on the other side of the gates, talking into the intercom saying, "But you've got to let me in, I'm the new head of media studies." And it's why over the intercom, the secretary was saying, "I don't understand, you were already here, you're taking assembly." By then, Lorraine was at the gate. She looked at the real new head of media studies. She looked at me. She said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm really sorry, Lorraine." She said, "Don't call me Lorraine anymore. I am Mrs. Sass, and you should know better, a big lad like you." I love reading that book. I hope you enjoyed that too. Now I've got your questions. Thank you for sending in your questions. And I have deliberately not read these questions so that my response to them is spontaneous. So I have a question here from Year 5 at St. Michael's School in Wandsworth. Give yourselves a big wave back. It says, do you have a favourite character in the book? And how did you decide on the message left on the moon? I can't answer that because that would be a spoiler, but I will answer the first one. Do I have a favourite character in the book? Kind of love all the characters. I like Liam because he's based on a real person, but I really, really love Florida because she's someone who is brave and curious, and she hasn't had a lot of chances in life, but she's sort of the hero of the story in that. That's another spoiler, isn't it? I like her because she's cheeky, she's curious, her mind is everywhere, and she's open to new things, and she's a bit of a hero of mine. So I've got a shout out here to Year 5 Panthers class at St. Botolph's. What a great name. We love the relationship between Florida and Liam. Did you base these characters on anyone or draw from personal experience? And they also say, we would love to hear the Porsche scene again. And you might be lucky there. Kind of already said that Liam is sort of based on this boy who's a friend of my son's. But I think when you're writing a book or telling a story, it's always good if characters are different from each other. So right the way back to the beginning of stories, Don Quixote is this big tall knight and his sidekick is little fat Sancho Panza, Laurel and Hardy. So I quite like that idea that Liam is quite, in a weird way, he's kind of shy and he's tall and slightly awkward. And Florida is like, she understands the world and she knows how to get things done. So I like the contrast between the two of them. Here's just a straight shout out. Tackley Primary, Year 5 and 6. Shout out to you. Year 5 at Shakespeare Primary. That's quite a thing to live up to in Leeds. They have said, what makes you pick a main character's interesting traits? What is the process? And how do you describe that? It's a very, very, very good, interesting question. I think you want to make a character when you're reading a book, you're going to spend a long time with a character. When you're writing a book, you're going to spend a year with the character or more. So it's got to be someone you like, I think. So you've got to find something to love about them. I think that's really important. And writing a story is kind of like getting to know somebody. Reading a story is kind of like getting to know somebody. So choose people that you want to spend time with, I think. So I like Florida's sparky brain, and I like Liam's kind of courage, and the fact that Liam comes to appreciate something very important in life, which is love, which is being in charge of somebody and caring for somebody. So I think that's kind of what does it. You want characters who would go on an adventure, characters who are open to having an adventure. You can't choose a character who would rather be at home. Although now that I've said that, I thought, maybe that's quite an interesting idea. Anyway, if I write a book about someone who won't leave the house, then I will thank Shakespeare Primary Leeds for that. Snowy Owl class. Wow, that is a good name for a class. Snowy Owl class at Kings Meadow would love a shout out. They are reading Cosmic and asked me what inspired me to write it, and will there be a Cosmic 2? There will not be a Cosmic 2. But what inspired me to write it, and I think this may answer somebody else's question. I'm just about old enough to remember people walking on the moon. And to me, that was an astounding thing. And I really thought I was living in the space age. And I I find it's so hard to make you understand this, but people of my age, we all thought we would go to space. We thought everybody would go to space, that we would all get a go at going to space, that we'd have holidays on the moon and maybe visit Mars. So anyone you know who's my age, it doesn't matter if they're the president of the United States or the biggest rock star in the world, anyone my age is slightly disappointed that they're not an astronaut. And writing this book was my opportunity to imagine what it would be like to be in space. And I spent a lot of time talking to astronauts. A wonderful thing about being a writer is that if you're writing a book about something, you can write a letter or an email to nearly anybody in the world and tell them, the biggest expert in the world, tell them what you're doing. They'll nearly always be very kind and share what they know. So this amazing thing happened to me is that I wrote to lots of astronauts, and one of them was a wonderful person called Alan Bean, who was the fourth person to walk on the moon. And he spoke to me and he gave me lots of advice about this book. So imagine that. I spoke to someone who walked on the moon. And he was such a wonderful person. He was so kind and he was so polite. He was like the politest person I've ever met. This is how polite he was. Listen to this. This is a great story. I don't know if you know this, but if you're wearing a big spacesuit on the moon, you can't just go to the toilet, can you? So they have all these tubes and things so that you can go to the toilet inside your spacesuit without anybody knowing, like when you were a baby. But he was so polite, and it's very difficult to move on the moon, because it's weightless and you've got to kind of really, everything takes a long time. It's like being in slow motion. And he was so polite that if he needed a wee, even though he was doing it in his spacesuit and you could do it without anybody knowing, he would go behind a rock and he did a wee. He would go, I'm going to go. It would take him ages to get there. I don't know what question that was the answer to. I'm sorry that I did that. Shout out to Year 5 at Brookfield Primary, who are on the last few chapters of Cosmic. You've probably finished it now. And they want to know how it ends. Which character was my favorite to write and why? I really liked writing Florida because I think she's the character who's most like me. She's like very omnivorous and she likes to know what's going on. She likes her food. But I like writing all my characters, really. My favorite character that I've ever written is the girl in Framed. This is a picture that someone painted of my book, Framed. This is a little Welsh town with lots of umbrellas going down the street. This was painted by an artist called Annie Parsons, and there's a girl in that called Minnie, who is very smart. Now, I'm going to finish off by reading another bit of the book. Can I find it? I hope I've marked it up. I'm going to read a bit about the car showroom because lots of people ask me to read that. It's in here somewhere. I know it's in this book somewhere. And I love reading this because I had a lovely experience reading it. I was at a big school in Glasgow, which is a boys' school, and all the boys were really, really big and quite scary. And I read this bit and I left it. Well, I'll tell you the story at the end. I'm just going to read you this bit. So this is the bit where Liam has discovered that he can pass himself off as a grown-up if he has Florida with him because she's small for her age and he looks like her dad. And that's how they ended up near the world-famous waterfront of Liverpool, just along the road there, looking in the window of the Porsche showroom. Florida said, that would be going too far, wouldn't it? Let's find out. I was beginning to get that crispy new world feeling. This was my first time in a car showroom. I'd never seen a car on a carpet before. It was like being in the living room of the posh car family. The cars looked smaller and glossier than they usually do. A man in a suit saw us come in and said, with you in a minute, sir, help yourself to tea and coffee. There was a coffee machine and a plate of biscuits, disappointingly, mostly digestive. Florida nabbed the only bourbon. And she walked around dropping crumbs on the carpet. There was one really nice, sleek-looking car. Florida said, take a picture of me with your mobile. Why? Because that's what dads do. So she leaned on the bonnet and smiled while I took her picture. And straight away, the man in the suit was standing next to us. I admire your taste, he said. Florida said, this is a Porsche Boxster. Wayne Rooney's got two like this in red. He has, said the man in the suit, and he bought them here. You're a very well-informed little girl. Then he asked me how old she was. Then he asked me how old she was. I said, she's 11. And then I thought I should say something grown up. So I said, I'm not convinced by this colour. There's a red one like Wayne's over there. Come and have a look. So I did. I've got to agree with you. A car like this was born to be red. It was nice of him to agree with me, although I don't remember saying anything like that. She costs a bit though. Oh, I know. The price was written on the windscreen. It took up most of the windscreen. Are you looking to buy or are you just looking? Yes, I know what I should have said, but to buy sounded more grown up. Would you be bringing your old car in part exchange? No, I like my old car. I'll probably keep my old car. It's a good car, my old car. I know the score. The other one is your family car. That's for when you're being a proper grown-up dad. This one is for when you're out playing boy races. Isn't that right? Mene, he winked at Florida. We never grow up, do we? Well, this one definitely hasn't, said Florida. Well, said the man in the suit, let's pretend we have grown up. What's your income? I'm not sure, it varies really, I said. You're right, you're too right. I'm too nosy. I mean, you haven't even said you want to buy the car yet, have you? No, I haven't. I'm always giving it the hard sell. A car like this, I should let it sell itself. And that's when Florida said, can we sit in it then? He looked at her for a second and she said, please. Go on then. We both climbed in. She whispered, you should have told me to say please. But you did say please. Yeah, but you should tell me before I get the chance to say it. That's more dadly. Okay. The man in the suit looked in and winked at Florida and said, comfy? Yeah, said Florida. Yeah, what, Florida? I said. Yeah, thanks, said Florida. And then the man handed me the keys. Go on, he said. You know you're dying to. Just nudge her out onto the forecourt and see how she handles. Before I could say another thing, he was asking the other salesman to move the other cars out of the way and open the big doors so that I could drive the Porsche outside. I'll push the seat back a bit for you. You're a big lad, aren't you? I could have said, yes, I am a big lad, but that doesn't mean I passed my driving test. But I didn't. I said, thanks, mate. Have you got your driving license on you, Mr. Digby? No, I haven't. I tried not to sound too happy about this. That's all right, Mr. Digby. I trust you thousands wouldn't. And he waved me into the seat and he crouched down next to me and he gave me a guided tour of the dashboard. That's your MP3 player. That's your ergonomic seat thing. That's your sat nav in case you want to go somewhere. And that is the ignition. So I turned the key in the ignition. The car made a sound like a cat purring. The man stepped aside and pointed to the bonnet. Engineering perfection, he smiled. It is at the moment, I thought, but in 5 minutes' time, it might well be 1/2 a ton of twisted scrap metal. I'll stop there. The story I was going to tell you before was that I read that bit. I read up to there at this school in Glasgow with the really big boys, and I was quite intimidated by them. And I stopped there and I said, now, has anybody got any questions? And one of them said, what happens next? And I said, well, I'm happy that you want to know what happens next. Do go away and read the book or get the teacher to read it to the class. Any more questions? Second question. Could you read a bit more? I said, well, we're running out of time and it's like we're looking for questions. Maybe get the teacher to read a bit more to you. That's great that you want to hear that. That makes me so happy. Final question. And this lad put his hands up and he was bigger than Liam. He was like a postal district with arms. He put his hand up. I swear the weather changed. And I said, and what's your question, little boy? And he went, would you just read me, man? So I sat and I read a bit more. I hope you want to read more. I hope you want to read not just this book, but lots and lots and lots of books. I hope you had a great time. I have had a wonderful time. Thank you so much for all your questions and your wonderful shout outs. Keep reading, be cosmic, reach for the stars, and goodbye.